Hey guys, Nigel here with you. Welcome back to the channel. This is Nigel's Modelling Bench, but you knew that. And this is part 10 of the Big Bad Buff build for beginners. Yeah, I got it right again. And you can see here we've got a big pile of plastic parts in front of us and practically nothing left in the box. So what should we do for this video? Should we go and do some seam work or should we get on with the wings? I think we'll do some seam work, but not on the fuselage. I think we'll start looking at these engines and what we're going to do to basically just make them look gorgeous. They're quite plain. If you look on the fronts of them here, there's no real blade detail or anything, so they could do with some work around there, but there's no aftermarket for anything that I know of. There's no aftermarket engines that I know of, and basically this is an out-of-the-box build, so I'm not going to be doing anything fancy. I think what you could do if you really wanted to make these engines more accurate, I think you could actually go in there and cut that area out, drill it out, file it, and then use the Edwards set for the G. Maybe cut away some of the stators. I don't know, even just sand this back. I'm sure there's something that could be done. I may look into it if I decide to build another D or one of the earlier variants with these flat fronted engines. But right here, right now, we're out of the box, so we're going to do the best we can with what we've got. And I can assure you I'll be showing you what I do. Now, we've got raised detail on here. We've got raised detail on the sides. I don't know if they're blow-in doors or something or whatever they are. But we're going to be losing that raised detail. I'm basically going to end up with these engines being pretty smooth. And what we'll do is we'll scribe some lines in them to represent the opening areas of the engines. And I'll show you how to do that. You can see on the top here we've got a scribed line. And in the middle there's two scribed lines, sort of 5 or 4 mil apart. So we'll enhance those and then we'll just scribe around the nacelles and a line down the side just to show the opening panels. But I'm sure that all this latch detail on the bottom here, which is raised, unfortunately, we're going to lose when we start sanding. We may be able to save some of it. Maybe we'll just lose the front little bit there and then scribe these lines in. But anyway, in fact, I'm not sure there should be a line there anyway. I think that's just one panel, isn't it? So we can lose that line and maybe save some of this latch detail. But we'll see what we do. But I'm basically going to have to put some filler in here because these, as we mentioned before, these nacelles are a bit of a mess. They've got huge sink marks in them, top and bottom, and they're all the same. We're also going to be blending in everything to make it all look nice and smooth. So let me get all this stuff out of the way. You can see I've got a new cutting mat here as well, which is a nice addition, something I've needed for a long time. And let's get this out of the way and go from there. Right, so for the filling work, we've basically got to fill these areas around here, and we've also got a step on the side. So what I'm going to do is fill all around here, but what I am going to do is cover up these little indentations, little sunken detail in there. So we'll cover that with some masking tape first, and then we'll put our filler in, and that will make sure that we don't actually get any filler in those holes. So bearing in mind this is a beginner's video for beginners or for new starters, let's talk about fillers. Now, the first one that comes to mind for me is the White Putty. These are the fillers that I've actually got and use from time to time. So the White Putty is basically just you squeeze it out, get it in the right position, let it dry. There's no mixing or anything. Just use that, job done. They also do a light curing putty, which is very strange stuff. I've used it once or twice, and to be honest with you, I don't like it. You put it on and then you expose it to light and it dries really, really quickly. It dries fairly hard, but it also shrinks to almost nothing. So I kind of not recommend wasting your money on it. It's not like there's some new fillers out there today I see get advertised on YouTube all the time where it's UV curing putty. It's not the same as that. It just shrinks back to basically nothing, and certain areas of it don't get the correct amount of light, so they don't go out and it remains a bit sticky. And I mean, I'm not even sure if you can still get this. I've had this for years, but it's in my opinion, it's not very good. 2004, it's not very good. Then you've also got this one here, which is your Mr. White Putty. This is pretty much the same thing as this one. It's okay, but I think the White Putty is slightly better. This stuff, again, it dries a bit weird. When you try and sand it, it's a bit strange. I'll try and show you these when we do some other seam work, and try and show you the different ones and what they do. There's also this one here, which is, there's this one, which is the Viejo plastic putty, which is, it's quite a nice filler. It's very smooth, but it doesn't really weld to the plastic very well. It will come off very easily. It has its benefits, like if you're doing a seam, say where your tail plane goes, which you wouldn't do on this model because the whole tail plane pivots, remember. You could basically put that in, get a wet cotton bud, wipe it over, job done, forget it. And it's got sort of groove to sit in, so it's not going to be falling out or anything. I don't like the stuff. I really don't like it. I bought it to try out. I think it's just tile grout. I don't like it because it doesn't actually stick to the plastic, and it can just be rubbed off. Some people swear by it and use it all the time. I personally don't like it. My preferred filler is this, and this is basically U-Pole car body filler, and this is actually the finishing. It's gold filler, it's called, and it's basically the finishing filler that they use on car bodywork for a really fine finish. And I just put some in an old Tamiya pot, as you can see here, and then you've got the hardener to put with it. Now you're supposed to use like a tablespoon to a pea-sized drop is the mixing, but really, as long as you put a little bit of hardener with a little bit of filler, it's fine for your plastic modelling. The less hardener you use, obviously the longer it takes to dry. The more hardener you use, the kind of hotter it is, and it dries a lot faster. I'll show you how I mix it, and then you can do the same. The reason I like using this is because it's got the benefit over this one that it actually sticks to the plastic. Okay, so it's kind of welding itself because I think it actually attacks the surface. So it's got the benefit over that one of that. It's got the benefit over this one and this one, that it dries extremely fast. These take quite a little while to dry, especially when you put them in deeper areas. And also they can be a bit weird to sand down, particularly the Tamiya putty. It's almost like you're kind of shaping it rather than sanding it down. It's hard to describe, but I will show you in another video. So yeah, it dries much faster than these, and also when it does dry, it has the same sort of hardness as the plastic, so it's like sanding it the same. I say again, I know some people don't like me referring to old videos, but go back a couple of weeks, look at my fuel tanker video, and you'll see me using it on the tank on there in quite large areas, and you'll see how it just doesn't shrink back. When you sand it, it's very much like sanding the plastic. One of the problems, some people use super glue as a filler, and the problem is that when you sand it, you're sanding the plastic, you're sanding the super glue, but the super glue is much harder than the plastic. So some people put powder in it, metal powder or talcum powder, whatever, and that actually softens the super glue and makes it more like a filler. And then with this one, you've got obviously the speed of the light curing, but you haven't got the stability of it all being the same. And as I say, it shrinks back a lot. So this is my preferred filler. This is the one I like to use. So I will show you how to mix it all up. You just mix it on a piece of paper. I would suggest you get yourself one of these rather than use knife blades. Just a little filler applicator. You've got the two different shaped ends. Really, really good. And very, very easy to use. Because you can, if you're doing a large flat area, like for this area, I just use that. Just rub it on, job done. And then when you finish, you just wipe it off on a piece of towel. If you've got any filler on that's dry, just put it in some cellulose thinners or some hot thinners, and it will soon dissolve it, and then you can just rub it off and clean it off. So let me get myself all sorted. I'm going to change the mat because I don't want to ruin this mat and get filler on it, and then we'll get some filler work done. Okay, so I'm going to let the camera run now so I can show you this in real time, just so you can see how good this stuff is and how fast it goes. If I remember, I'll put a link down below. If I don't remember, please ask me to put a link in, and I'll put a link in down below. So I'm putting a small amount of the filler on here. In fact, I'm not going to be able to finish this tonight because I'm going to have to go in the garage and get some more. And it's, what is it now? It's just gone 10 o'clock and I'm not going out in the garage now. So, right, so there we've got our filler. And all I'm going to do is that the hardener comes in this little pouch, and I'm just going to put a tiny little, get some on there, tiny little drop like that. Okay, that's all you need. And like I say, it's not rocket science. It's the same with your paints. When someone tells you 60-40, 40-50, whatever, you know, it's not rocket science. Just do it so it feels right. And on that note, I have had some comments, questions on email, and some people would like to know how to mix the paint out of the airbrush, because they really don't believe that mixing it in the airbrush is the right thing to do. And also something I hadn't considered, if you're going between different paints, if you've got contamination in the airbrush, it will cause you a problem. So yeah, basically I will show you how to do it properly. Right, so as I said, we're going to show you this in real time so you can see just how quick this dries. So I'm just going to put this on here, and filler application is it's something you will learn. I would suggest, if you're new to the hobby, just put too much on to start with, and then you will soon learn, because you don't want to have to keep going back. Now, if you have got an area which is quite deep, it is better to put 2 or 3 applications of filler rather than try and do it all in one, particularly if you're using these, because they take forever to dry and they shrink back. So I'm just going to put this on here like this, and you can see I'm putting on too much. So just rubbing that around like that. And it's we're starting off with one of the most difficult shapes to do, to try and get it to go around a circle. But and as you notice, I didn't mix too much up because it dries so bloody fast. Thanks for all your kind comments, guys, and everything. Really, really good to know that there's so many out of you enjoying this. There's even experienced modelers enjoying this, so shows I've got some educational, or not educational, some entertainment value, as it were. So get that all around there. Make sure we don't get any in the front of the engines. If you do, leave it. Don't try and get it out. Let it dry and then get it out. It's the same with pretty much everything. When you're doing to scale modelling, if you have an issue, if you get glue or mess anywhere, leave it alone. Don't try and clean it up while it's wet. You'll make much more mess than you started with. And you can see here, this is starting to dry, so as I go over it, I'm just pulling it off. So there we go. So that is basically starting to dry now. So I'm just going to wipe my spatula off. My filler applicator, I've got a old rag over here. Just wipe that off, get that clean. Okay, and then what you want to do is get this piece of paper, turn it inside out. Don't use the same bit of paper again, because what will happen is you'll get bits of the dried filler in the new filler, and it'll make it impossible to smooth it out. So we'll get some more now. Let's just get some more of this out. That's a little bit more that time, I think. And then what we'll do is we'll get some of the hardener, just a drop like that. Job done. Mix that all up together. And if you notice, I'm not stirring it. This is the best way to mix filler, even if you're doing it on full scale with a card body. People tend to stir it. You don't need to stir it. If you just scrape it and squeeze it off, scrape it, squeeze it off, scrape it, squeeze it off. That's the best way to mix it. Okay, and you can see it's really creamy. So we'll get it on here, around there, like so. As I say, I've got some on the front edge. I'm not going to touch it, I'm going to leave it. Same here. Just go around. Just like that. Job done. just going to rub it out of that panel line so it's just not in there. I've got a little bit left on here, so I can put some on another one. And there we are. And there you go. So the reason I left the camera rolling is so that you can see in real time just how fast this stuff dries. Clean that off. That is almost ready to sand. Okay, you can see I can go with my finger and take all the high bits off. And that, you can see I can touch it. It's dry. It's not really ready to sand yet, it's a bit too soft. If you do sand it when it's too soft, it'll just clog all your sanding sticks up. So it's best to leave it a bit longer if you can. So let me go on and get this other engine filled, get half of this one done, and then we'll come back and look at doing some sanding. Okay, so here we are literally, I don't know, 15-20 minutes later, and you can see I've already done 2, just to see how it all comes out. I need some more filler in that one. But basically, I've got a coarse sanding stick here. This is like a 100 grit or 150, I think it is. And just basically going to sand the filler away. Okay, not going mad, just gently working away. And what you want to do is sort of blend the nacelle into the rest of the engine pod and not go sanding away the front edge. So you can see there, we're breaking through the filler here on the front. So I'm going to stop and then just move around. And what I'm doing is just basically sanding on there a load of flats, if you like. So you're basically making a multi-flatted shape, and just not sort of going too mad. And you can see here it's kind of, it hasn't bonded to this plastic very well at all, which is very strange. I've been using this stuff for years and I have never known it react like this. It's kind of, it almost comes off rather than sands away. So we'll have to go do something else on this. Whether this is a certain type of styrene that the filler doesn't like or whatever, I don't know. Maybe the filler's going off, so it's you know, if it's going off and it's drying out, its solvents aren't doing the job and biting into the plastic. I don't know, but I'm not too worried about it coming off. It won't come off. Because it will be sealed in with primer and paint and all sorts. But what I'm going to do after we've done this, I'm going to brush some Mr. Surfacer on, and so we'll show you that as well. So for the newbies out there, I have done a whole video on Mr. Surfacer. I absolutely love the stuff, and many people, particularly Mr. Mower, they like to comment about my use of Mr. Surfacer, and I've often said I'd have it for breakfast if I could. I love it that much. But yeah, don't try that at home, kids. Don't go eating or drinking Mr. Surfacer. It's not edible. So there we go. So that's that done. So just basically roughed out the shape there, almost like a rough sculpture. We'll just go across that bottom there. You can see I've also put tape on the engine to prevent it from being scratched by the coarse stick. And I've used the cheap masking tape, this cheapo stuff here, because why use your expensive Tamiya masking tape when you can use cheap stuff when all it's there for is to stop you sanding, or stop you, to prevent the plastic from being sanded. So come along with the sponge now. This is a 400 grit sponge, and I'm basically just very lightly sanding. I'm not pushing it in at all, and all I'm doing now is taking off the edges, if you like, where I've just gone around with the flat stick and basically generated a load of flats. What I'm doing now is just rounding it all up, and then when we've got some Mr. Surfacer on there, we'll do the same again, and we'll be able to see the shape we've got. So there we go. So what I think I'll do with the rest of these engines, I think I'll show you the Tamiya filler. Let me go down the sides, because obviously this plastic isn't liking this filler too much. I think it's probably that the filler's drying out is the reason. So I'll get some fresh out of the garage. But I'm not sure where else we're going to need filler, but I'm going to need some in there. You can see there's a low area there, and but basically we got these massive great sink marks that were in here. We've got them filled in now, so and that was the main objective here, was to get those filled in. And there we go. So I'll just do the other one. Just come around, gently sand. I should be wearing a mask when I'm doing this rather than just doing it without a mask and talking to you, but it's only a little bit, so it won't hurt. But when you're doing this, make sure you wear a mask, have some extraction on or whatever. You could always do it wet. I mean, you can get the filler wet if you want to, but then you must make sure it dries out before you apply any paints or primers or anything. Unless, of course, you're using acrylic paints, and then they'll all dry together, because the acrylic paint will be water-based, or some of the acrylic paints are. There we go. So that's that in there. Same on this side. Just go it over. As soon as that front edge appears, stop. There we go. As you can see, it's quite dusty. Makes a mess on your board. What I tend to do is I've always got my Henry here just behind me, and I just basically use that just to clear up, because if you try and rub it off the bench, it just sort of smears it all around and it goes everywhere. And I've got my piece of denim here for wiping the sanding stick off rather than using my jeans. There we go, and then come in with the sponge again. Once again, just go round and remove it from all those areas. And there we go. And as you can see there, that's those, all four of them done with a much better shape. You can see this one was a lot worse than the others. In fact, maybe I'll just sand this a bit more, because maybe I've left a bit too much filler on there. There we go. So, I'm going to get cleared up now, get my Henry, suck all this up, clean the sticks off on the denim, just like so. Get this sucked up, and then we'll do some more. Right, so the next thing I want to do now is seal this filler in because of its funny reaction. So what I'm going to do is brush over it with some Mr. Surfacer, and I'm just looking in here, I've got an excess on there that I need to get rid of. So we'll get in there with the sponge and get that off. So what I'm going to do is seal it with Mr. Surfacer. Now, this is Mr. Surfacer 1000. I did talk about this in the tools and paints bit. If you don't know what this is, go back and look through my back catalogue, and you'll see I've done a video on Mr. Surfacer. I think it's called Mr. Surfacer, oh I love it, or something. And this is the 1000. You can get the 500, the 1200 and the 1500. It makes a fantastic primer. If you thin it with Mr. Colour Leveling Thinners, you can spray it through your airbrush. It is absolutely brilliant stuff, and I love it, and you will see me use it a lot in my videos. So I'm basically just going to get this now and brush it on. And I'm not worried about having a lovely finish. I'm not worried about it being all perfectly smooth and everything. I'm just going to brush it on here. And the whole idea is it's basically a filler. Okay, and it's like a brushable filler. And what it will do is it will dry out and it will pull itself down really tight. And it will show up any imperfections or any areas where I need to go again. And when it's new, it's quite thin like this. Now if you want it to be a bit thicker, what you can do is just leave the lid off for a couple of hours and it will thicken up, and you can see the paint in the lid there is a bit thicker. So that's what we can do, and just brush that on there, okay, and then leave it to dry, and probably leave it for, I don't know, 12 hours before you try and sand it. If you try to sand it too soon, it just wrecks your sanders, so it's best to be patient. And that's one of the good reasons for going through the kit and doing stuff like this, because once we've done this bit on these engines, we can get on with something else and leave these to dry, and go from there. So just get some of the paint out of the lid there because it's a bit thicker. So we can brush this in, and it'll basically dry back, and we'll be able to see any areas where we need to go in again with any more fillers or some more Mr. Surfacer or whatever. And then what I will do on the next application, I'll use the Tamiya filler so that you guys can see what it's like. In fact, I may use the Mr. Hobby one because it's white, so it's easier to see over the Mr. Surfacer. And when I say easier to see, it's just easier for you to see what I'm doing with it. I don't mean it's easier for me to see. So if where you are in the world you can't get the Mr. Hobby stuff, just get the Tamiya. I'm sure you'll be able to get the Tamiya fillers on Amazon or eBay or whatever. So there we go. Some of the single pack fillers, like I think the Humbrol stuff, I'm not sure that's any good. I don't keep up with it. There's so many different products on the market, and they'll all tell you that theirs is better than anybody else's, but they're often not. just get what you like and what you like using. Everybody will tell you that their primer is the best primer on the market, and you know, this filler is the best filler on the market. And what I try and do is, rather than say this is the best, I just say this is what I use, except for when it comes to this stuff. When it comes to Mr. Surfacer, I think there is a Tamiya equivalent, surfacing primer or something, but honestly I can't see how you could improve on this stuff. It's just no way. It's just no way. I got a bit in it there I just want to get off. It just will not go away. Come on, go away. As you can see, it's very thin when it's new. It's much better when it's had a bit of use and it's got a bit thicker. What I generally do is decant some into an old bottle and just let it thicken up, and that's probably what I'll do after I turn the camera off. I've got my old bottle of 1000, which is turned to basically goo. And what I don't know, what I'm not sure about, is as it gets older and thickens up, I'm not sure if it actually affects its drying properties, because I'm starting to find with my other one, which is thicker, you can see on the side of the jar here it's quite thick. Well, I've brushed it up. So what you do is take some off the jar, brush it up like that, just leave it for a few minutes, and it will thicken up in that quick a time. And you will see now that that's much thicker. Just in those few seconds it was on the side, so worth bearing in mind. Brush some more up there. And then brush it on. And we can see that already, just with that bit of filler work and a bit of sanding, already these engines look a lot better on the fronts, because we haven't got all those horrible sink areas, and we've actually got a contour now which is going along, which as the engine is, instead of it coming along down up down up down with all the moulded sinks. So we'll leave that like that, we'll let that go off, and then we will come down with a sanding sponge and basically sand it back and see what we've got. And the other thing worth remembering with Mr. Surfacer, if you dedicate brushes just to Mr. Surfacer, if you just come along and wipe them off like so, don't need to start using thinners and stuff. As soon as you use Mr. Surfacer again, it will soften the residual paint that's in the bristles, and it'll just, you can see here, there's one there. I don't bother cleaning them. I just leave them with the Mr. Surfacer in. As soon as you dip that in, that'll become soft. So and I generally only use my old brushes. We can see here already where it's pulling down. We're going to have to put some more filler in there, some filler in the bottom there. But you can see this is basically, all this is doing is sealing in the filler that I've originally put on. So I'm going to let that dry and then we'll look at sanding it all down. Right, so while these engines are drying, what we can do now is start looking at the seams on the tail planes and the fin. So basically, if we look on here, we've got all this raised detail on this front edge that we're going to try and avoid ruining. So once again, what we do is we come along with our cheap masking tape and just take a piece off. And you don't have to do this once you've got a bit more experienced and sort of skilled, if you like, clever, or cleverer with your sanding sticks. You don't need to do this, but for beginners, good idea. Just cover up that area. Okay, and then you know that even if you do stray off and you touch anything with the sanding stick, you know you're not going to take away the raised detail. Now, you've seen all these before. I think I've shown you that it's been a couple of days since I did part 8, so part 9 should I say, sorry. So I don't quite remember exactly what I covered in that. But basically what we're going to do now is sand this edge. So we want a really hard stick, a nice straight flat stick, and literally just come along and just sand around the edge. Okay, and we're just going to remove any of our sprue nibs or anything that's there. Okay, anything that's causing us any problems. But basically, if you remember, we had the glue oozing out, so we can sand that, job done. Okay, and that is basically that seam gone. And then you can come along with this is a 1000 grit sponge, and then just lightly sand over there, and that's it. Now we've lost our raised detail on the very leading edge, but chances are it wouldn't have had any detail on the leading edge anyway, so don't worry about that. But the fact that you've got your tape on there means the raised detail will come down and stop. Now if it was scribe detail, as the Model Collect kit and the AMT kit are, we could basically come along with a knife and we could just roll the knife around and re-establish that line. But as it is with this one, replacing that raised detail in that area would be really, really difficult. It's going to be all black and camouflage and everything. We don't really need to worry about it. It's not going to show anyway. So we're not going to bother trying to replace any raised detail on these leading edges. And then when it comes to the ends, if you want to deal with them, you can just take your tape, remove the tape from the ends, from the tips, and then we can just once again go around there again with a hard stick, and all we're doing is removing a bit of a sprue nib on there, removing that seam, and just go along like that, and there we go. So we've removed a minimum of detail, and this is where it's worth taking the time to assemble the parts, and then you're not spending forever trying to sand away and fill and get rid of huge steps and everything. So it's a good idea to take the time when assembling and get it all right. Now on the trailing edge, I'm going to cover up these vortex generators, because we obviously don't want to be touching them. And obviously I wouldn't normally do this, but this is for the beginners out there. If you cover up any detail, and if you do happen to slip with the sander, you're not going to take off any detail. And again, on the trailing edge, we can just sand that like that, get rid of any oozed glue, job done. And if you have got any little split areas there, you want to just paint a bit of Mr. Surfacer in, then you can. Now, if you remember, I said I'm going to thin these trailing edges out because they're very, very thick. Okay, so we're going to do that now. So what I'm going to do is move this tape, double up on it, and get it so that we're not going to be rubbing any of this. So let me get that done, and then I'll be straight back. Okay, so I don't want to sort of blow your minds away or anything, but what I'm going to do now is a little bit of scribing. Now if we look on here, we've got a trim tab on the trailing edge. Come on camera, focus. We've got a trim tab on the trailing edge which is scribed. Now what people would normally say is we'll sand away, and then once we've lost that detail we'll scribe it back. But what we can actually do here is save us having to do that. Now unfortunately the way this kit is designed, as I mentioned in part 8, what they've done, they've made the tailplanes the same, so you've got one side like this and one side like this, which is unfortunate because there's vortex generators missing and everything. So what I'm going to do now is make sure that we know which side is the top and which side is the bottom. So I'm going to take a magic marker here, and actually I'll take my Sharpie, and I'm going to mark on here top, and then I'll mark on this one top. Okay, the reason I'm doing that is because I'm going to use my razor saw, and I'm going to go into that scribe line there. So I'm doing the wrong one. I'm going to go into that scribe line there, and because it's the top, just in case they don't perfectly line up, I'm going to make sure this one is the one that's going to line up, and I'm going to cut down through, just because if you think about it, if it's a trim tab, it would be disconnected on the sides and hinged across the middle. So basically we can do this on here. We may as well do it on both sides while we've got the saw out. And all I'm doing is basically stroking through there. Okay, and if you're wondering what saw I'm using, if you look back at the tools video I did, it's a JLC saw, and they're absolutely brilliant. Okay, there it is there. Libor Kopacek, made in Czech Republic, available from modelingtools.co.uk or littlecars.com. And basically what I've done now is sawn through there, and we can see that actually it does line up, and that's better than a lot of modern kits don't actually line up. But the reason I'm at the top is so that I've cut it there. If it didn't line up on the bottom, then it doesn't matter so much on the bottom as it does on the top. So if we start sanding now, we're going to lose some of that detail, so we need to rescribe this line to make sure that we get it so that it stays, we don't lose it. Now there's a load of different scribers you can get. There's your simple pin. You could use a needle and a pin vise or whatever. This is like a dental tool with a point on it. This is the Tamiya scriber, which is actually an Alpha P cutter. It's actually called an Alpha P cutter. You can get these on Amazon and everything. And then there's your trumpeter scriber there, which is probably the cheapest one you'll get, but not very sharp and not very hard wearing. And then we've got these type here. Again, these are available from Premium Hobbies. They're great. Oh, that's actually a scraper. But these little things are great. You basically hold that in your finger and it pivots around. Very, very easy to control, very easy to use. And then you've got these here, which are the high Q ones. And again, they're very fine, but they're very, very good for fine work. This is a bit sort of big and chunky, so you won't see me using these on this particular kit. And there's a scribing guide there. So basically, I'm going to use this one. This is the Tamiya one, which is a big, it gives you quite a big groove, and that's what we want. So I'm just going to lay that in there, and I'm not putting any pressure down. I'm just going to pull it back, and as you can see, what it does, it pulls up. See there, it pulls up a string of plastic. Okay, so we can just go over there. 2, 3. Okay, and then we're on the other side. Going in there. Never put any pressure on it. Just pull it back gently. Okay, because if you put pressure on it, if you come out of the groove, you'll put a great big gouge in your model. You don't want to be doing that. So I'll do this one as well because we're here, and then you can see again. So I'm just going to go in there, just pull it back. 1, 2, 3, just like that. And then into that one. This one's not quite so deep, so I'm going to basically push forward first. And I'll just clear it out, and then 1, 2, 3. There we go. Job done. So now, come along here, and we're going to sand this trailing edge. And once again, I am going to use a marker pen, just to make sure I kind of keep it all flat. Again, if you're a brand new guy, brand new modeler, then you might want to give this step a miss. But if you're not, or you're feeling brave, this is a really good way to thin your trailing edges out. Now, I showed you in part 8, I think it was, how to basically thin these out when you're actually assembling. But what I'm going to do now is thin them out. And the reason I've got the marker on there is so I can see I'm staying even. I don't want to be standing more away from here than I am up there. I want to keep it all the same. Okay, And basically this is just taking away all the chunkiness on that edge. Now we're going to start losing that scribe line soon, so I'm going to, once again, I'm going to scribe it back in. It doesn't really matter how heavy it is because it's a separate panel anyway, and it would be quite a heavy line. So we'll do the same on this side while we're here. Okay, and then on this side we can sand away. And now you can see the value of having this tape. It will save me sanding away any of my vortex generator detail. Okay, just make sure that we're not losing that. It's much easier to do it this way round. You've got the panel line to follow rather than trying to re-establish it after it's gone. As you can see, I'm working away at both sides. What you don't want to do is get too much off of one side. You want to work on both sides evenly. And this is the kind of thing, doing stuff like this will take your model to the next level. Okay, you know, if you do enter into a competition and there's another B52 next to it and they haven't done this, the judges will see it straight away. They'll pick up on those thin trailing edges. The slabby, great big boxy trailing edges just destroy the look of any model. It looks awful. So I'm going to scribe that again, just to make sure we don't lose it. I think this sanding stick has just about had its day. Steve commented on one of my videos that if this is the original set that I had, then they've done really well. And yes, it is the original set I had. I have got a couple of new sets actually, but I just want to see how long these will last. Okay, and I'm just going to go in there and just pick up that line again and scribe it again. There we go. Same on here. It's easier to do it if you actually place it down on the bench. It's easier to do it like that. Just like that. Okay. And as you can see, that is really thinning out nicely. Now, one thing I am concerned about, it's thinning out here, but it's still quite thick here, so I need to take more off here in this area. And obviously, if you are doing this, don't do it too soon after you've glued it. This has been glued for probably 3 or 4 days now. If you do it too soon after the glue's gone on, you'll basically end up with a bit of a gungy mess on your trailing edge. You need the glue to all the solvents to come out. Okay, just looking at it, you can see it's still got a bit of a square edge on there, so sand it some more. And this video may be a couple of days after part 9, and I'm sorry about that. It's because I'm spending a long time making these masters and parts for the Model Collect B52s. I'm doing the noses and everything for them. So now we can see on there we've got a bit more of an aerofoil shape than a slab-sided mess. Now we've got this rough sanded area, so I'm just going to go over here once more. Whoops. Scribe that line in there. Scribe that line in there. Again, I'm not pushing down, I'm just letting the tool do the work. Okay, and then we're going to take a, what have I got here? This is a 220. Just going in the opposite direction. So we're sanding across the sanding lines we've got from the thicker stick. Okay. So you can see the lines from the thicker stick are running like this. So if I go like this and sand in the other direction, that will remove them. As you can see, as I told you before about going like this, it doesn't really matter on a flat surface because there's nothing to round off. If you like, if you're working on an edge, it's best to keep your sanding one way. Okay. We've got a nice sharp edge on there now. So we'll just have a look on the camera and show you how we're going. Show you how we're looking. Come on, camera focus. There we go. And you can see now we've got a fairly sharp, fairly consistent edge. You don't really want to go down to a totally sharp edge because it will be extremely weak, and if you tap it, it will damage it because the plastic isn't that hard. And if it is a harder model, like a Hasegawa, it has particularly hard plastic, it may just chip it, you know, knock a little chunk out of it. So it needs to be sort of a bit thicker than scale, but you can certainly get it a hell of a lot better than it is in the model. Okay. And that is really nice. And then I'm going to come along now with a 400 grit Matador stick and just give it a polish. And that'll be good enough for the finish we get with this 400 grit will be good enough for primer, because we're going to be priming the whole model in black, and I will probably use an aerosol. We will see. I will probably use either Games Workshop Chaos Black, because that is a brilliant black paint and it's very hard wearing. It's quite expensive. I think it's about £9 or £10 a tin the last time I looked. But it is very, very good, and it's a good base to do everything else from. Failing that, I'll use a Halfords. If you're in the US, Halfords is basically our local, in the UK we've got car and bicycle shop that does all the bits and pieces you need. So there we go. So we'll do a comparison now. So just do that, and then I'm going to go over it with a 1000 grit sponge just to basically give it a quick polish. There we go. And don't go radiusing this off or anything. This is all what makes a B52 control surface accurate. One of the problems with the Model Collect kit, it's all a bit too radiused off on the ends and everything. So now you can see that basically that is all done and thinned out. If the camera would focus, come on. Okay, and you can see on the end we've got that aerofoil shape in there, rather than, that's how it was. So you can see now, so much better, so much thinner. It's not very easy to see because it's all, I'll wipe it on my shirt. It's all covered in dust. But there you go, you can see now how much better that looks. And it'll just make your model stand out from the crowd. Okay? So I won't bore you with making you watch the other one on camera. But basically all we did, we got our saw, we cut down through there, and then we got our scribing tool and we scribed in there. And just to show you, you can use these tools are absolutely fine. Just got a pin, just follow the line the same. The only disadvantage with a pin, it tends not to cut any plastic out, it's just gouging it in. So it tends to sort of, if I could use this, what you'll end up with is this kind of thing, whereas this is actually cutting a line of plastic out. This actually cuts a line of swarf out, okay, and that is just basically pushing the plastic out of the way. Think of it as like this is like a digger and that's like a plough, if you like. Okay, and then what we'll do here, we'll just come up, so we pull into this corner this way, just to sharpen up that end. It's always better to pull the scriber into the corner rather than having it pushed in. Alright, so there we go. So we can take the tape off now. Like I say, we use this cheap masking tape because it's like 99p a roll rather than your £2.50 or £3.50, whatever it is for your nice modelling tapes. And just go in there with a scriber, just enhance that line where the elevator is. Always amazed at how small the control surfaces are on the B52. Like the rudder is absolutely tiny. Look at it, it's nothing there. We're going to do the same on the rudder. We're going to thin that out as well. So I'll show you that in maybe the next video. But there we go. Just show you once again, without all the tape on there, what a massive improvement that is. Okay, another little tip for you guys. Right, so back to the engines now. And I'm sorry to be darting it around, but this is what it's all about when you're doing these modelling. You, rather than sort of, you know, do the engine and then think, oh, I'm going to sit and wait for the paint to dry, you can get on and do something else. And then once we've done this bit of filler, we can get on and do the other tailplane and stuff like that. So what I'm going to do now is use this Mr. White Putty. I'm using this one rather than the Tamiya purely because it's white and you'll see what I'm doing better. So this is basically a they call it Mr. White Putty. It's basically a single pack filler, so you're not mixing it with any hardeners or anything. And what we can do is just put it on here, and it will basically bond itself to the Mr. Surfacer beautifully, because they're pretty much the same product, I think. And what you don't want to do is get this too thick, because it's not that easy to sand back, in my experience. But I've been proven wrong before, so. And I'm just going to put this anywhere where I've got a step where I need to repair a step. We've got a little bit of a hole there. There's a bit of an indentation there. So I'm just going to get some more off of here. Just give the tube a little squeeze. Get it onto your little spreader and just spread it around. And I've just been looking on Amazon and I've looked on eBay. That Chaos Black, that Citadel Chaos Black spray paint has got, it's like 15 quid or something now, or 13 quid. So yeah, it's gone up a bit since I last saw, but it is bloody good stuff. And I think I'll probably buy a tin of it to do this. And then what we'll do is we'll take the camera out in the garage, and we'll before we fit the engines or the wing tanks or anything, when all the airframe is built up, we'll give the whole thing a coat of black primer. And my intention, I'm thinking at the moment, I am planning to prime the whole thing in black. Obviously prime all the engines and everything separately, and then do all our painting and weathering and stuff, and then probably fit the engines and the wing tanks last of all, because obviously once the engines are fitted, it's very, very difficult with a model this size to get into the to paint the sides of the pylons and stuff. And if you want to do any weathering on them, or because we'll have the weapons pylons as well inboard of these. So what's nice with this kit, it's got great big huge trenches. In fact, I'm saying that now, I'm thinking I need to fit the pylons before we finish painting, because the top needs work, needs filler work, doesn't it? Oh dear, I don't know how we're going to get around that. Maybe, if you guys got any ideas, let me know. Let me know what you think. Maybe we could paint the undersides of the wings before we fit them to the fuselage, and then fit the pylons and do all the filler work and everything, and then fit all that to the fuselage, and then deal with the fuselage to wing seam, and we'll have this all primed ready. And then it's going to take some thinking about. You can see now this filler's all coming out at the end of this tube because I've been squeezing it. Just get a drop down in there. I don't need very much down in there at all, just a little bit. And again, what we'll do with this, we'll sand it with a coarse sander, and then we'll work it back with a sponge. Got some joint lines there. Another tip I'm going to give you, even if you're not a beginner, whenever I rescribe lines, like I'm going to scribe around here to show that these panels open, I never scribe where the glue joint is. I always go like to one side of it. Reason being is, in that glue joint you'll have soft plastic, hard plastic, filler, mister surfacer, there might be super glue in there, anything. So if you just go to one side of it, you can pretty much, you might come across a bit of filler, but you'll pretty much just be scribing into plastic. And it's when you get the different surfaces, it's when you're scribing around something or scribing along a line. If you go across filler, if you've built a few models, you'll know you scribe across like on a wing joint where it drains the fuselage. If you've got a bit of filler in there, it kind of goes doomph and you end up with a great big dent. And in that situation, the best thing to do then is, where you've got your panel line, is push the scriber along rather than pull it. Push the scriber through the line. So there we go. We'll wait for that to dry, and then we'll sand and blend that out, and then we can start looking at the sides of the engines. Okay, so that filler's dried off now. Remember, we've used the Mr. Hobby, Mr. White. So again, I'm going in with this is like a 220 stick, but it's worn out, so it's probably more like a 400. And we're just going to basically sand away and just leave that white putty in the lower areas. And if you wonder why I'm using a hard stick, it's because I want to basically keep the surface flat. If I go in with a sponge, I'm likely to dig under, because the filler is softer than the plastic, so the sponge is likely to sort of dig into the filler rather than the plastic and then put an indentation in it. So that's why I like to use harder sticks for sanding fillers, or anytime you've got differences in material. So if you've got like super glue, plastic, filler, whatever, if you use a hard stick, you should get away with it. But quite often with stuff like super glue, it's so hard you often don't, and it's nigh on impossible to sand all the marks out. So there we go, that's that one done. So now we've got that done, I'm going to go in with this is a 600 sponge, and just basically lightly go over, no pressure, just lightly sanding over, just to sort of blend everything in. And then once it gets a coat of primer, we'll see how it looks when it's all in one colour. Because the other thing is, when you've got these different colours, we've got the Mr. Surfacer, we've got the brown filler, we've got the white filler, and we've got the grey plastic. And when you've got all these different colours, you can't see what's straight or what's flat or whatever. It's now impossible. You need to make it all one colour, and then you're laughing. It's a bit like, I'll show you now, it's a bit like this, okay? That's my late G H nose conversion for the Model Collect kit. And then when you look at this one, and it's all in one colour, you can see it just looks so much better, and you can see the shape much easier when it's all one colour than if it's different. Okay, other than these pods on the side, this is exactly the same. But you can see that it's so much easier to see the shape when it's all one colour. So I will now go on and sand the rest of these and get them sorted, and then we'll come back, like I say, and we'll work on the sides. Okay then guys, now I appear to have made a boo-boo here. I have been sat here filming, and the camera, I know I switched it on, but I seem to have lost a whole part of my video. I don't get it. Something's weird's going on. So anyway, we filled down the side of the engines, and I used the Mr. Hobby filler, which I just showed you. As you can see, these little bits of tape, they're covering up these holes here, these indentations, so we don't get filler in them. So basically now all we got to do is sand. I'm using the 220 grit first, and just gently sand. No, don't go banging loads of pressure in and stuff, and just gently sand away the excess of this filler. And all we're trying to do is just get a kind of roundish shape into it, and then we'll go over with a sponge. But the trouble is, if, as I say, if you use a sponge, it will follow the contour that's there. So if you start with a sponge, you may well end up with an uneven surface, whereas if you start with a hard stick, it will give you an even surface, and then you can finish with a sponge. So there we go. And now I've got a 400 grit sponge here, which is pretty coarse for a sponge, all things considered. Okay, and what we're trying to do is basically get the right shape. It's kind of flat-sided, but it's kind of radius, and then it sort of straightens, and then it comes down a bit. If you look down there, you can, I mean, it's got to, because it starts off round, it doesn't really get any wider, and then it goes oval. So it's got a sort of, here it's going to be almost circular, and then here it's going to be really sort of, you know, like the like a NASCAR racetrack, like an oval with straight sides. Okay, so because I'm not sure if an oval is basically a circle which has been stretched, isn't it? But an oval, I don't know what that's called, that shape that's called, where you've got an oval but with flat sides, like those portholes on the Titanic. So there we go. So we can take this tape off now, and you can see that we've got filler going up to the edge of the tape here. So what I'm going to do is just sand that away. In fact, I'll use a hard stick to keep it nice and straight. And I'm not going to worry about trying to blend and take the filler all the way down here and everything. I'm just going to sand away until I get the shape, because, you know, we could spend forever and a day getting an absolutely perfectly accurate shape, and then when you come to scribe it, scribing in filler is not fun, believe me. So we want to try and get as much plastic exposed as we can, and just let the filler do the work for taking care of the evenness. Now that there is lovely and even. We've got a bit of a shape going on here, so I'm going to come in with a harder stick and just radius that off, like so. Then go in with the sponge. And as you can see, sanding, seam filling, it's not about just piling in there and sanding it all out or putting tons of filler on. It's all about little bits of applications here and there, and little gentle bits of sanding. And now you can see on the back of here, we've got a step. So we're going to sand that away. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my finger over that, because if you rub the side of the sanding stick on that cone, you will end up with flats on the cone. So I've just got my finger there, just so that I know where that cone is and I'm not sanding up against the side of it. Okay, so there we go. Now we're going to have to do some filler work around this raised area here anyway, where it meets the pylon. I'll just show you. So yeah, we're going to be doing filler work around here. Okay, so don't worry about sanding that, because you're going to be filling that anyway. But on the sides here, we want to basically get in there and just get them level, so they're straight, so you haven't got that step on the side, like so. Okay, and then we're going to do the same on this side, sand this one out. And this video has been all about filling and sanding and filling and sanding, but filling and sanding are a pretty big part of modelling, particularly with these older kits. So if you're into your AFVs or military stuff, and you only build the likes of the newest main kits and the newest Tamiya kits and, you know, the newest Riffield model kits, then you probably never even use filler. But if you're doing some of the Kitty Hawk stuff, some of the kinetic stuff, aircraft, you know, filler is going to be a major part of your build. And, you know, some of the more modern stuff as well, some of the newer kits, not that good, unfortunately. I've heard, I haven't built it, but I've heard, so please don't shoot me down if I'm wrong, but I have heard that that Revell 1/48 Tornado is a bit of a bugger to build. So there we go. So we get that tape off of there, just like so. And then once again, I'm going to sand out that shape. we go, just keeping the radius and the flat-sidedness, if you know what I mean, all in check. And then just run over with the stick. Again, I'm not putting any pressure on, I'm just letting the stick do the work, and as you can see, if I push it in, you can see that that sponge follows that shape beautifully. Okay, careful of that, like going over the edge, because what will happen is you just radius that edge off. So you need to be careful and stay away from that edge. And there we go, now we've got those engines pretty well all blended in. I need to do some more work down in there. So just get in there until we get a nice smooth transition. And there we are. And then just come with the sponge to take away any flat spots. And then with the 800 sponge we can give it a bit of a polish. Okay, and then we've got one more to do, so we'll get that done and then we can get the engines in primer. But I'm going to call it a day for this video because it's gone over an hour, and I know it's not, if you're keen on your modelling and stuff, or you're not new to the hobby, I know this may have been a little boring for you. I'm sorry, but we must remember the beginners out there that want to see all this. All this is really valuable for them to watch. So there we go. There we are. Job done, and there we go. So get one more done. You've still got more work to do in there. But as I say, when we get a coat of primer on these, once they've got a coat of paint on them and you can see everything, get all that rid of all that different colour, then it'll be a lot better to see. I think I'll probably sand away this raised line on here, but I'll probably leave this latch detail because I've only lost the very front. You can see down here, I've only lost the very front one, so I think I'll leave those others just for a little bit of something there. I mean, they're underneath anywhere, and anyway, should I say, and nobody's going to be picking this thing up. But you can see here, we're going to have some sanding work to do around here to blend these in. I think I've actually done one, so you can see there. And we're going to get the plastic as perfect as we can so we can get away with not having to do too much sanding in this area, so that we can keep all this raised detail on the pylon. Unfortunately, if you're building the model collect kit, guys, that has no surface detail on the pylons, engines or anything. So yeah, it's going to need some more work, but we'll I think we'll cover that in the next video. We'll get these engines primed, do the scribing on them, and then we'll fit the pylons, and that'll be part 11. So see you all soon, guys. Thanks for watching. Happy modelling. Stay safe. And I am now going to put up another video because I've been thinking about stuff and I've had a few ideas. So see you in a minute. Thanks for watching. Looking forward to seeing you for part 11, and hopefully you're joining in with this build. Somebody commented that apparently I've upped the prices of B-52s worldwide. I haven't. There's some on eBay that are £95 and £100, and they've bid £95 and £100 since before I started this, so not to worry. But it does seem like the sort of £35 to £50 ones seem to have disappeared. And if anybody's got the B-52H from Model Collect, the late B-52H, the one with it flying up with the red sky behind it, I'd be interested in buying it if you're interested in selling it. So thanks for watching, guys. See you all soon.